Good afternoon, Minnesota Twins fans. Welcome to another episode of Twins Spotlight. My name is Seth Stoes of Twins Daily and twinsdaily.com. This is episode, 45 already. We did 35 last offseason. This is our 10th episode already this offseason. Hard to believe we've been doing this for about a month, but we've had some great guests, and today is no different. As we end November, and the baseball world's been kind of interesting the last few days, and obviously we're all thrilled with the Byron Buxton news. We'll maybe ask a little bit about that. But our guest today, like last week when we introduced you to or interviewed Sean Aronson of the St. Paul Saints, today our guest is Wichita Wind Surge broadcaster Tim Grubbs. Here you see him in the booth with his family, and we don't know a lot about Wichita yet. They just completed their first season as a Minnesota Twins affiliate in a beautiful new stadium, and so we'll talk to them. Before we bring him into the conversation, just want to let you know this is currently live on Twins Daily Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube. If you want to participate, if you have any questions or comments for myself or Tim, please feel free to leave a note in the comments on YouTube and on Facebook. I'll be sure to ask those as well. So again, and if you're listening to this later, it is available also on the Twins Daily podcast, which you can find wherever you download podcasts. So without further ado, let's bring in the star of today's show, and that is Tim Grubbs. Tim, you're the star. How you doing today?
I'm doing great. Getting back in the swing of things now that Thanksgiving is over. Just got back into Wichita. In fact, I was in a Twins affiliate city over the weekend, so I was in Cedar Rapids for a couple of days. So okay. I'm excited to be here. I appreciate the invite.
Oh, absolutely. I think this will be fun. And, again, I'd like to talk to the broadcasters from all the affiliates as part of this Twins community we're trying to build around here. And let's start. Well, let's go all the way back. What was your introduction to baseball? Were you a good player, or did you know early that you wanted to be a broadcaster?
I think I knew early that I wanted to be a broadcaster. Okay. I was not a very good player. I can't say that. I was not a terrible player at like the lower levels. But as kids grew and I stayed, very small, it didn't take much time for me to know, probably 7th and 8th grade, that, my path was going to be, if I wanted to stay in sports and I wanted to stay as a broadcaster, I was in baseball as a professional career, I was going to have to be, some other way. It wasn't going to make it as a player.
Well, we all learned that at some point. It took me a little bit longer. Like I told Sean last week, I still wonder why I wasn't drafted, and then I look and realize it's not that hard to figure out. So tell me a little bit about your broadcast career. If I read your timeline correctly, you spent a lot of time in New Orleans. Is that where you're from? And did you go to Tulane? I know you did a lot of broadcasting there for a long time.
Yeah, New Orleans was very kind to me, and it was a great 17 years that I lived down there. I'm from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, So I grew up. As a Pirates fan. When it was, listening to Lanny Fratteri was the voice of the Pirates. I came in right after Bob Prince, had been ushered out, the gunner, as they called him. But I heard a lot of his calls because of the way things were. Myron Cope was the voice of the Steelers, the inventor of the terrible towel. Those were kind of the early influences for me as a broadcaster. Went to college in Pittsburgh, and then I started venturing out of out of Pittsburgh, right after school. Went to Hickory, North Carolina, where I was an broadcast intern for the Hickory Crawdads in Single A, then went on to do a half a season of hockey. Oh, I shouldn't say half a season. It was a full season, but we didn't do a whole lot of radio. I was more just the media relations person for the Winston-Salem Mammoths, a team that doesn't exist anymore. And then I stayed in Winston-Salem with the Warthogs for a couple of years in North Carolina. I think one of my favorite things about my career is when you hear the teams that I worked for, Crawdads, Mammoths, Warthogs, and then obviously went to Knoxville for a couple of years for the Tennessee Smokies, and then moved to New Orleans, where I was the broadcaster for the Zephyrs and then Baby Cakes. And that was the franchise that relocated to Wichita. So, no, I did not go to Tulane. I went to Robert Morris College back at the time, Robert Morris University now. But living in New Orleans, I was a backup broadcaster for Tulane. For a lot of baseball, and I was the voice of their women's basketball team for 8 years and did a whole lot of TV work for ESPN3, ESPN Plus. So, I never went to Tulane, but I almost consider them my alma mater to some degree, just because I follow them, because I was involved and became friends with their coaching staffs for, parts of 16 years.
This is really something I didn't ask Sean about, but at Twins Daily, we had an article where one of our writers interviewed Dan Hayes from The Athletic, who I believe was down in Wichita for a weekend or a few days later in the season as well. But just about getting your start and kind of the hard knocks and stuff. Now, you've been all over the place. One of the things that I think is really interesting about most broadcasters is, now you're doing baseball, but you've done basketball, you've done men's and women's sports, you've done a multitude of different sports, college and pro. How do you enjoy baseball relative to the other sports? And how important is it for you to kind of get a mix of sports as well?
I think it's great to have a mix because of the pace and everything like that. Obviously, baseball, it's crazy. When I'm planning to do a college basketball broadcast and you see my board of all the players' stats and everything like that, it's a lot of overkill because I'm so used to baseball. There's a lot of downtime in baseball where, you know what I mean? You need to have that information ready to go, when there's a 12-pitch at bat or a game that just goes 4 hours or something like that. But, I think now, as I've gotten a little older, I think I enjoy football the most. And I think I say that not as a broadcaster, but I think that as a fan, because when I'm watching an NFL game or a college football game, my brain kind of turns off and I just kind of watch the game as a fan. I can't watch a Twins game or a Royals game or a Pirates game or whatever, Miami Marlins game, without thinking about my job all the time. What did he do that I don't do? Or what can I learn from this? Or what are the signs on the outfield wall? As a corporate salesperson who's selling advertising or, trying to sell in-game promotions as part of my job with the minor league team. When you watch a major league game or a minor league game or any type of baseball game, I'm constantly on the job trying to pick up something that I may, pick that might help me out in the long run.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's important. And I know that, we've had a lot of students listening. I know some of our writers at Twins Daily are interested in, journalism in some way, maybe broadcasting. So I think it's kind of good to do a little education here while we talk to you here on my lunch hour. Now you're down in Wichita. So you've been there just since the last, say, 2 or 3 years then,
Yeah, no, so I've lived in Wichita for a little over 2 years now, which is crazy, because I've only done one season. I was with it. So we broke ground. I was here. My first time I ever stepped foot in Wichita, Kansas is when we broke ground on this stadium in February of 2019. And then I stayed in New Orleans and worked the 2019 season. At the time, the New Orleans Baby Cakes were the AAA affiliate of the Miami Marlins. And I moved. So the season ended in Oklahoma City on Labor Day 2019. My family, my wife and daughter had already moved here. I moved here 3 or 4 days later. So I've been here since early September of 2019. Started working for the team in a trailer, just beyond the left field wall. And, was here during all the phases of the construction. By the time I got here in September, the ballpark was starting to take shape, starting to do corporate sales, team travel. And in 2020, we were supposed to be in the Pacific Coast League as the AAA affiliate of the Miami Marlins. So I was excited because I was going to be being with the Marlins for 12 years at that point. I would have brought my Marlins knowledge to Wichita, my Pacific Coast League knowledge to Wichita, and now it will be just a new ballpark and a new city. And obviously the season got shut down. And by the time I ever called my first game here at Riverfront Stadium, I was with an affiliate that I hadn't seen, a minor league team. The Twins, I hadn't even been in the same league as the Twins since 2002 when the Twins AAA team was in Edmonton. They were the Edmonton Trappers. That was the last time I had even seen a Twins affiliate. And then it was in a brand new league, AA Central, the old Texas League. where I would be visiting all these cities that I had never been to before. So all of a sudden, it was really learning everything on the fly instead of all the knowledge that I had gained being with Miami and being in the Pacific Coast League.
For those of you listening later on the podcast, I'm showing some pictures of this incredible stadium, a stadium that I'm guessing cost the city of Wichita or whoever paid for it about as much as 7 years of Byron Buxton will cost over the next few years, I'm sure. But just absolutely stunning, and I'm really hoping to get down there this next year for a series or for a week or something, because it's just incredible. So again, we're talking with Tim Grubbs. He's the broadcasting voice of the Wichita Wind Surge. You mentioned a little bit whether it's knowledge or maybe a lack of knowledge initially with the Twins organization, but what was your involvement in those talks and those conversations when Wichita needed a team and the Twins needed a team and wanted it relatively close? Now, Wichita and Minneapolis aren't real close, but compared to where some minor league affiliates are and are compared to the level above and below them, Wichita's right in the Midwest, right in the range that makes a lot of sense. So how involved were you in those discussions? And as you started researching the Twins, did you feel like that would be a good place?
So I wasn't involved in those talks at all. That's above my pay grade. Our management team, our ownership team, they took care of all of that. So I say that I moved here in 2019 in the fall, in 2020. I pretty much knew in 2020 that our inaugural season for the Wichita Wind Surge might be the only year of the Miami Marlins affiliation. I assumed we would stay AAA and become maybe a Brewers affiliate or something more Midwest. I knew the commute back, the shuttle between AAA Wichita to Miami probably wasn't going to be in for the long run. But no, I wasn't involved with the Twins, but I had a feeling we would be an affiliate with a Midwest team. And when I heard it was going to be the Twins, friends of mine, who worked with the Fort Myers team, and a friend of mine worked for the Pensacola team. I had heard great things about the Twins, so I knew they had a really good reputation of developing players. So I was excited. Obviously, I didn't know many of the players, but hey, that's what the off season's for. When the announcement came in, I think November of last year that we would be a Twins affiliate, I just started the process. The problem for me was because there was no season, typically like now, I know we'll have some of our players back from the end of the Wind Surge season, so I know they'll be back. And you look at the Cedar Rapids roster, and that'll filter in maybe the rest of our opening day roster next year, maybe one or two free agents here and there, maybe a few more. Depending on the year. But because there was no 2020 season, I really didn't even know where to start. I didn't know what players were going to be here to open the 2021 season. So it really was a little bit difficult, but, you learn on the fly, and, here we are. And I was excited to be a part of the organization, and, it's been tremendous.
Now, I know you, before the season started, you had done some podcasts, some video, things like that. I don't know if you really even had time during the season with everything going on and the still in pandemic mode and all that. But one of the conversations that you had in that initial show was the AAA versus AA. Now, obviously, you would think the more, the better ball might be AAA, but with minor league baseball, that's not always true. Or the exciting prospects generally are in AA for longer than in AAA. And if you look at what happened with the Twins this year with all their injuries and such, there was a shuttle between St. Paul and Minneapolis all year long. You would have been so busy with transactions if you were the AAA affiliate. And secondly, you had just a plethora of prospects, like legitimate prospects that you got to watch all of 2021.
It was great. Obviously, being a AAA broadcaster for 17 seasons, I had been in AA before. I've been in AA Southern League for a couple of years on my way up. I was a little nervous about the level of play, and I wasn't sure. I'd always heard that AA play had exceeded AAA because of the emergency players, most AAA rosters are full of 4A guys that are the shuttle guys just going back and forth. I spent many years, which Sean dealt with this past year with the transaction, where every day you made a move. So I kind of enjoyed it. I also enjoyed the youthful vigor. I mean, the energy that these guys had. Obviously, because of the media and because of the pandemic, we weren't able to ask the guys to do as much in the community. We still did some, but whenever I went into the clubhouse and asked a guy to do an interview, whether it was for me, for our broadcast, or whether it was for the local TV stations or radio station, every guy was excited about it. Where at the AAA level, it's not necessarily that way. I always say no one's excited to be in AAA because, those guys either want to be in the big leagues or they've been kicked back down to even the coaches for the most part, because you're so close, especially when the major league team's struggling. It's a little easier to be the AAA broadcaster when the major league team's doing well, because everybody's like, well, they're not going to mess the chemistry up at the big league level. Right. But obviously my years with the Marlins, where we shuttled players constantly, and I would watch the Marlins' best prospects go from AA to the big leagues or spend very limited time in New Orleans. It kind of was like, maybe AA is the better way of going. Obviously, my time in New Orleans being, and I'm dating myself because I'm going to be talking more Marlins than Twins here, but we missed Stanton. Giancarlo Stanton jumped us completely. We missed Jose Fernandez, jumped us completely. Christian Yelich was with us for like 3 games. Marcell Ozuna was with us for 30 games. JT Realmuto was with us for 4 games. And those are all major league all-stars. Yeah. And when you look at our alumni, we did send a lot of guys to the big leagues. The list is long, but some of the best stars of baseball at the time went either from Jose Fernandez, the late Jose Fernandez, jumped from single A all the way to the big leagues. So, I mean, I was excited. And obviously this year it kind of proved it. We saw Austin Martin for a good bit after the trade. We saw Jose Miranda for a good chunk of the season. Josh Winder for majority of the time. Unfortunately with his injury, hopefully he can get back. But, so our roster changes weren't nothing, what the Saints featured. And I was kind of, at one point, obviously I read their game recaps. I read your guys every day. I was kind of like, you know what? I kind of enjoying this AA thing. Maybe this is the better way of going.
Well, I mean, you got to find the positive regardless. And again, those listening, this is Seth Stows with Twins Daily, twinsdaily.com. Check it out for Twins coverage and minor league coverage throughout the year. We've had just a ton of articles, even in the off season. So be sure to do that. There's my quick ad. I'm talking with Tim Grubbs, director of broadcasting. What is your official title? Yeah.
It's the same title I had with the New Orleans team, where I was the director of broadcasting and team travel. Team travel is not as difficult as it was at the AAA level, being in the Pacific Coast League when you were with New Orleans, having to fly to Vegas and Tacoma and Nashville and Omaha and Des Moines, etc. But there's still some details to it. And then I handle a lot of the media relations. Obviously, you and I communicate on a daily basis during the season. And right. I you just did the ad for Twins Daily, but if you listen to my broadcast, you obviously can tell that I read Twins daily because it's such a great knowledge. And you guys and your staff do a great job. I must commend you. As a new person to the Twins organization, I really learned a lot from your guys' website.
Well, that's very kind of you to say. And like we like to say, if you follow the Twins Daily, you should follow Twins Daily. So
I agree.
And anyone listening, if you do have any questions or comments for us, please feel free to ask those as well. I did want to talk a little bit about, the media relations side this year with the Zoom meetings. And obviously, I'm guessing you've talked a little bit with Dustin Morris, and they had to do it last year in the big leagues and again this year. But for you, what was that process like? I know we didn't do it every day, but you did it every, couple times, maybe every other week or something like that. Was that a challenge to get players to want to do that? It's just so different than just being able to go into the clubhouse and talking to whoever's there.
You know what? It was because of the schedule. Obviously, I would communicate with the media. When was their best time? When was best time for you? Try to get as many people that I could. And then all of a sudden, because of coordinators and rovers coming into town, it was a lot easier to do it here in Wichita as opposed to on the road. I knew what our internet support would be in this $75 million ballpark. I knew where I could set it up. There's a auxiliary part of the clubhouse that I was able to go and put my computer in there. And Ramon was great, Borrego and all, the coaches were great. Like I said, the players always said yes, but the issue with Zoom, you have to schedule this days in advance to make sure everybody's going to be ready. And then all of a sudden a coordinator comes into town and there's early work. And there were times, I know you were involved, where I might have said, hey, so-and-so is going to be on the show along with Ramon and so-and-so. And all of a sudden it was a last second change. It's like, hey, instead of it being, Miranda, it might be Andrew Bechtold or something like that. There were times where we had to change the lineup at the last second just because of availability of players. But I think it was great, and the players were great about it. And I think it's Zoom interviews on the newscast, something a few years ago you would have never seen. You always saw the live interview of the guy at the ballpark, where nowadays we had to do it, and we made the most of it. I don't know if, the second half of the season, we didn't do much Zoom, which was unfortunate for, I think, you guys, because the media was able to come out and we were able to get the interviews. But I don't know. I guess it's something that we need to talk with Dustin and find out how the Twins want to proceed, if that's something more they want to do. But they kind of let us go. They were great about making sure we had the players' access, and Alex Hassan and Brian Maloney with the Twins were very good about kind of letting us be an affiliate and getting our players out there, at least, with social distancing and all those different parameters. But our players were awesome about it, and I'm glad people got to hear the guys' stories, because there's more to than when you read their bio in the media guide.
Well, what it is it's forcing me to get down there, which again is part of the plan here eventually. So I need to do that.
I was hoping you would make a trip down. I know Dan was able to see it. Dan Hayes from The Athletic. I made it to Kansas City at the end of our season, and I got to see Betsy and some of the other writers. And I don't know if it works out. I really haven't mapped out the Twins schedule, but I know a few of them were saying, hey, maybe when we get to Kansas City, we can get there a day early and make the quick drive down from KC when the Royals Twins are playing and check out a Wind Surge game. I hope they can, because this ballpark is phenomenal. I counted it up this offseason, last offseason, when I didn't have anything to do because of COVID. I've been to about 85 minor league stadiums, and this place is towards the top. I mean, there's some great facilities out there, but it's definitely a top 3 or 4 minor league facility in the nation.
What was the general, did you get any feedback? Did Ramon or the coaches get feedback on the stadium, on the clubhouse, on the batting cages and things like that? I've been to Cedar Rapids, which is a lower level, but they've got nice facilities there. But from what I've seen, yours is just incredible there. I would have to assume the players and coaching staff would really appreciate that.
Ramon loved it. From day one, when we gave him the tour, he was just fascinated by the facility. We have the home clubhouse is massive. The auxiliary clubhouse, which we used this year for our position players, because of COVID and social distancing, we were able to space it out. The visiting clubhouse was great. The indoor batting tunnels are phenomenal. The lighting is essentially the same as what it is at Riverfront Stadium. One of my favorite parts, obviously being involved in this project from day one, and when the team arrived here a few days before opening day, I was in the clubhouse. And after being through the clubhouse so many times with 0 players, 0 equipment, and kind of visioning how it was going to function as a facility, but seeing the guys come in as they came here right out of spring training and hearing the guys talk about how great the clubhouse was and how great the facilities were, it was awesome. Ramon raved about it. And then the truth was, as one of the few people that was allowed to go to the home clubhouse and the visiting clubhouse, you go down there and you bring game notes down there, starting lineups, statistical packs. You got to meet the other managers that were from the other teams in the league. 2 of the managers said, hey, can we play all of our home games here when you guys are out of town, just to say, how much they love the facility. And it was top notch. Our late owner, Lou Schweckheimer, who was the visionary behind this ballpark and bringing baseball back to Wichita, Kansas. I mean, they did all their homework with all the new Major League Baseball protocols, with the new PDL that everybody reads about. This place checks all the boxes. We're not going to have to do much, because they did everything the right way for the players. And I'm not even getting into all the aspects of everything the fans have. So I hope you can make it down. I know you were trying to come down late in the year. The schedule didn't work out, but it's just a phenomenal place to work and call baseball games. And the fans came out with tremendous effort this year. So it was great to see all that.
Yeah. But I did get new tires shortly after I was planning to get down there. So those tires hopefully will be good next spring. And again, kind of one of the things we talked about is the fact that, I live at the tip top of Minnesota, right on the Canadian border. And then the Twins are in, obviously, Minneapolis, and St. Paul is allegedly 10 miles down the road. But, it seems to take forever to get there because of the traffic on 94. But then the AA affiliate in Wichita, which is, I think, maybe an 8 or 9 hour drive from the Twin Cities. And then the, high A is in Cedar Rapids. And between you and Cedar Rapids, you just mentioned you made that trip over the last weekend. What is that? Five hours maybe?
Well, so my wife's family is from Cedar Rapids. So we visited some friends and family in Des Moines, which was a little bit more than a 5-hour drive. And then Cedar Rapids is another 2 hours up the road. So, at least where we were going, the part of Cedar Rapids, drove right by the ballpark. I've been by there several times. I've never been to a game there. So I definitely I probably never go to a game there unless it's a playoff game and we're not in the playoffs. It'd be the only way. But no, so it's not a bad drive. I mean, we had some players this year. I remember, I think it was Spencer Steer and Jordan Gore. They actually drove from Cedar Rapids down here to Wichita at one point on one of those Monday off days. So it's definitely a drivable thing. And I know a lot of Twins fans that would check in, and some of them were auxiliary media that would come in and do, they would come in from Iowa. The team photographer for the Cedar Rapids Colonels came down, I think, 2 different times to shoot the former Colonels players here in Wichita. And I like that we're geographically all here in the Midwest, and we're trying to convert Kansans to becoming Twins fans. And I think over the course of the year, we did it. Obviously, we do play a Royals affiliate. So there was a game earlier in the year. Ryan Smith, our hitting coach, goes, "Hey, is this going to be a road game for us?" Yeah. And you look out in the stands and you see a lot of that Royals blue, a lot of Royals caps. But when our players took the field, they cheered. They cheered for the Bobby Witts and the Nick Prados, the top prospects, but they rooted for the Wind Surge. So I think in time, I think it really will be great, especially the fact that the Twins play the Royals so often, and it's such an easy drive up to Kansas City that our fan base can go check out the Twins when they're on the road and see. We only had 2 guys make the major leagues this year with Gilberto Celestino and Giovanni Moran. But I think in years in the future, maybe half that roster will be, former Wind Surge players, which would be awesome to be able to make such an easy drive to see our alumni.
For sure. Absolutely. And you mentioned the Royals. I mean, with Omaha and AAA and St. Paul, with the 2 games I went to in St. Paul, they were playing Omaha, and that's part of the fun of going to these games. When I went to, I saw Bobby Witt, I saw Nick Prado. When I went to a game in Cedar Rapids 5 years ago or whatever. Fernando Tatis was with whoever the Padres low A affiliate was at that time. I don't remember. Seeing Nick Castellanos with West Michigan. That's part of the fun of minor league ball is. Yeah, your guys, but also the other team, and just the ballparks and the experience is pretty special.
It really is. I mean, the names that I go through, what's funny is I've done minor league baseball for 25 years. And when you look at the guys that I have seen either play for the team that I broadcasted for or the other team, most of the big names are from when I was in single A or double, when I was at the lower levels than I was at AAA. And it gets back to that. I did get to see Fernando Tatis play, not Junior, the dad. So that makes me feel old. Okay. I saw Vladimir Guerrero play, not Junior, but the dad. So I really do. I saw him play when he was with an Albany Polecats team back in 1995, my first year in minor league baseball. And I know Twins. Josh Wetzel was the broadcaster of that team. Yeah. He used to be with the Twins AAA team. He's still he's still in AAA with Rochester. They're just not Twins anymore. But, the list goes on. And it's great to see these guys when they were younger and to be able to say it. One of my favorite things, as a broadcaster at the AAA level was always when you go through the box score of in-game scores, when you're just giving information, you could say, hey, former Omaha Storm Chaser or former Iowa Cub, as you're saying, Chris Bryant hit a home run tonight for the Chicago Cubs, former Iowa Cub. You know what I mean? Yeah. Just to remind fans of those guys came through this ballpark. I was able to do at the beginning of the postseason this year. I always do a thing. It's for my own personal, and I did tweet it out, but it's probably, I don't know how many people like it, but at the beginning of the postseason, how many former New Orleans players were in the postseason? I had been with that club for 17 years, and it was 25 players. And the funny thing about it is that the Marlins were not in it. So that just shows you the the transition of play. The fact that our major league affiliate didn't even make it, and yet there was still that many guys that made the postseason. And, it's always fun. Even in Wichita this year, 2 former New Orleans players came through with the win surge. Peter Mooney, who ended up retiring, and Jordan Milbrath, who also ended up retiring, I think for the most part, a Minnesota guy. So it was great to see a couple. I didn't think I'd see a former guy that I had been on the same team with, but it was good to see those guys. And, for Peter, I understand, injuries got the best of him and ended up wrapping up a good career. But no, and it's great. A lot of the coaches I remember from coming through, different teams that I had seen as a player. And I think that's where, as soon as you tell them, I remember seeing you as a player, the coaches always get excited because they want to remind the guys that they're now coaching, hey, I did play. I actually was pretty good at one point.
All right. Again, that's the voice of Mr. Tim Grubbs. You can follow him on Twitter at Mr. Green. Tim, I can't even talk, at Mr. Tim Grubbs.
Yeah, Tim Grubbs was already taken, and I wasn't sure about throwing a number in there. I couldn't think of a Twitter handle, so kept it pretty simple.
Absolutely. Last few minutes, I want to kind of I don't want to say lightning round or rapid fire, but, if I mention some names and just kind of your first thoughts as you kind of take a look at them and think about what you saw over the course of the 2021 season. And I want to start with your manager, Ramon Borrego. What are some of his qualities?
Oh, he's great. Like I told you, I've been in minor league baseball for a while. Probably the best communicator I've ever been around. And obviously this year with all the COVID protocols, I was one of the people that had the access to go to the clubhouse and be on the bus and travel with them, which I'm very grateful that the Twins allowed me to. But, you didn't want to be in the clubhouse as much as I used to be, just in case. I was just trying to be completely safe. Ramon would text me the lineup every day, sometimes before I even eat lunch. 11:30 in the morning, I'd have the lineup. He was great about transactions, and he was the same way with the players. I know our catchers always knew, and catchers are an important position. You always knew when they would play and when they would have an off day so they can rest their legs and rest their bodies. So Ramon was sharp. I hope he's coming back. I was rooting for him to get one of those bench coaching jobs with the Twins when they opened, but when I don't think he got any of them, hopefully he's back in our dugout because he's phenomenal. Really enjoyed him.
Real briefly, I know Ryan Smith is very young, but very highly thought of as a hitting coach. He went to the Arizona Fall League. Virgil Vasquez has some major league pedigree, played in the big leagues. He actually threw a no-hitter in the Twins minor league system when they were in New Britain. Talk a little bit. I think Joe Manganiello is also on the staff, kind of a catching guru. Talk a little bit about the coaching staff briefly.
Really good guys. Obviously, coming from Miami Marlins farm system, which was a little bit analytics to go into the Twins, which is they take a deep dive into analytics. And talking to Ryan Smith, the running back, but Ryan about on a day-to-day basis. There were times I would be in the clubhouse after the game and be like, we were 1 for 12 with runners in scoring position. To me, being a stats guy, it's frustrating. But he would be like, he would kind of take me off the ledge, because he would be telling me, but a lot of those at bats, Bechtold or somebody 112 miles an hour off the bat, we were making good contact, and in time, that's going to be important. And obviously with the track man, they had it set up during batting practice so you could see, how hard the exit velo is, how far the distance is, and different things like that. And you saw these guys working. Lincoln Feisick was our video coordinator, and he'd be in the clubhouse with showing these guys videos, and Ryan and Virgil and Luis Ramirez, our pitching coach, they would just be working with these guys just on the little things, stuff that sometimes, even though I've followed baseball my entire life, there was some stuff that I've heard, conversations I overheard this year that, was pretty new to me because of all the analytics and all this stuff. And, some of it kind of goes over my head, and I try not to bring it up too much in the broadcast because you try to keep it. it is a different age, and it's great to see, how it's being worked, within the minor league system and how to develop these players.
Absolutely. Let's talk about some of those players. And again, I don't want to take up too much of your time. Definitely want to respect that. Let's try to cut it off here in about 9 total minutes. So, but I want to start. Obviously, it was unfortunate that Royce Lewis got hurt. He would have probably started the season there. Maybe he starts there next year. But Jermaine Palacios was supposed to come in as a utility guy, and he ended up becoming a pretty key factor, not only in the lineup, but as kind of a solidifying factor in the at shortstop.
What a fun guy to be around and a fun guy to watch. I mean, he was kind of the glue to this ball club. Obviously, with baseball, you always talk about the core, the center of your field. Your catcher, your second baseman, your shortstop, your center fielder. And if you can do well in those positions, you're going to play well defense. Palacios, I mean, he got to balls that as a play-by-play broadcaster, you try to be ahead of the game. As a ground ball deep to the hole is short, you don't think that the player's going to get to it, and Palacios got to it. I mean, and he had a good arm, and of course, offensively, he was great. I hope he gets an opportunity, at the next level next year. Obviously, when you got guys like Austin Martin and Royce Lewis, who both play that same position and both play outfield, obviously, I understand how this stuff works. But Jermaine was a lot of fun, and I hope he's got a good chance to play at the next level because he's a valuable player, and I scanned some stats about a week ago. Seems like he was doing pretty well in winter ball as well.
Yeah, definitely. As I'm screwing up my screen here, but so how about Austin Martin? What did you learn about him? Obviously, immensely talented, a high draft pick. Twins fans obviously excited about him. Obviously, now he's got the stigma of being traded or acquired for Jose Barrios. What were some of your takeaways from your brief time with him?
The one thing that Austin brought, and I don't know if he intentionally did it or if it was just kind of, obviously as a major league, as a Twins fan, the day they traded Jose, was waving the white flag that everybody knew for sure the Twins were mailing in the season, at least from making a playoff contention. But to our ball club, who we were already in first place, the day Austin showed up, Simeon was also in the same trade, and we knew we were going to get him, but of course he was overseas with the Olympics. I felt like the buzz in the clubhouse was like, all right, where the major league team just kind of threw the white towel, where we were the team that was like, all right, we just got a number one prospect to add to this already good team. It was like the push. It was like our players got excited. And I don't know if he intentionally brought that or if it was just the mentality of it, but he was a good player. Obviously, from his championship pedigree at Vanderbilt, it carried over. And even though he was very young and one of the youngest players on the team, he phenomenal outfielder. I was blown away by the routes he would run in center field, and scary. Even the game that we had clinched, he ran into the wall face first. I mean, it was to make a play, and it was like, whoa, you don't have to do that. Obviously, that with the Byron Buxton stuff, you need to pace yourself a little bit. It's fun to watch, and you love the intensity. And he was a pretty good shortstop, but I'm not a scout by any means, but I would imagine his future's in center field because he was. I mean, to me, I was very impressed by what he did in the outfield, and he was solid at short, and he didn't have a whole lot of power, but I think it'll come in time. You got to remember how young the kid is.
Yeah. Well, and you mentioned Simeon Woods Richardson. I had a chance to have him on a show maybe about a month ago. What an impressive young man. And I know he didn't pitch real well, and I'm sure it was a weird situation being with Team USA that whole time, but not pitching in games. And then he took some time to kind of get back into a routine. But, man, that's an impressive young man.
Yeah, his first couple outings, obviously he joined us after coming back, and we put him on the development roster, which was something new this past year. And he would throw bullpens with Virgil and Louie, and I'd ask them, I was like, how was it? And there were scouts that I would talk to in the clubhouse that would kind of observe him, and they were like, he's impressive. And when he actually got into the games, the numbers didn't relate. But you saw some sharpness to him. And I think, now with a full off season and him coming, and maybe we have him back, I would imagine with as young as he is, he was the youngest player in Double-A this past year, at least amongst the youngest players. So I imagine he could be back. I expect some big success. And you're right, true professional, really good guy. And I sometimes when you're traded twice, you start thinking, well, wait a second, is there something wrong with him? Like,
Right.
is he a bad guy? But no, I think everybody at the clubhouse loved him. He seemed like a real professional.
And, maybe we can, just because I'm a rambler and I do want to respect your time. Maybe we just.
You're good. When you get us broadcasters on, I know with Sean last week, we had the tendency to talk too much.
Well, and I'm so curious about all of these guys, and I like to talk about the guys that don't get talked about. But speaking of really good people, he was the guest on the first episode this offseason, and that's Jose Miranda. He was with you for 2 months. Josh Winder was with you for 2 months. That was probably a tough Monday when those guys both made the trek up to St. Paul, but at the same time, clearly deserved it. Talk a little bit. I mean, again, I want to try to limit this a little bit, but about those two, because they put up some numbers for your team.
They put up huge numbers. Jose Miranda, that Monday I was in Midland, Texas. We were in the middle of a long road trip. We were in Midland on our way to Amarillo. I knew the day was coming. Believe me, it did not surprise me. I knew what those guys were doing was phenomenal, but it was tough. It was tough to know, that you lost your best pitcher and your best position player, but both of them, were remarkable people as well as what they did on the field. I think, obviously Winder ended up getting hurt, so hopefully he's healthy and ready to compete in spring training for a big league job. But I really think Jose he's going to make a major impact in the big leagues. His ability to just make contact. And I know there's a jump from AA to AAA and, to the major leagues, but there were so many times he would, when he had that 2-strike approach, and I asked him about it a couple of times. He said that his father down in Puerto Rico would just get a bat and they would throw him like stones and stuff. And he was just work on his hand-eye coordination. And, wasn't always the 465-foot home run that he hit. Sometimes it was just the little single that just blooped over the second baseman's head that it was fun to watch, because this is a day and age where they're always talking about exit velo and they're always talking about, driving runners in. But sometimes you just need to get a guy on. And he was fun to watch, and Winder was very impressive on the bump.
And Winder did get called up, and he was added to the 40-man roster here. So were Cole Sands and Chris Valamont. I think Sands was, if not a given, very close to a given. Valamont was kind of a question. Everyone knows he's got a big arm, but he didn't have control and command this year. But when he did, he seemed to dominate. Strikeout numbers are crazy.
And there were times there were times in the same game, he would strike out guys and you're like, whoa, that's phenomenal. And then the next inning or maybe in the same inning, he'd get behind on guys and walk them. He definitely has the ability. Cole Sands was impressive. Obviously Belazovic got a lot of the praise and a lot of the Baseball America write-ups and all that sort of stuff. But when Cole was healthy, he was impressive. I was not surprised to see him added to the 40-man, because I think he's got a big future, especially if he can stay healthy.
I'm glad you brought up Belazovic too, just because I would have probably forgotten here. But we do have a question from a listener, and that's from Joel Heller, who asks, who is a sleeper player out there for the Twins? Is there a guy that maybe we at Twins Daily or just nationally isn't talked about that you think one, just deserves to be talked about, but two, might surprise people even in the next year? I'm one of those that believes if you're a pitcher and you're having success in AA, you have a chance. If you're a position player, you have a chance. Maybe that's just a chance to get to the big leagues. But I've got a name I'm going to ask you about, maybe two, but I want to get your thoughts on this question without influencing you at all.
Well, Spencer Steer would be one of the guys that doesn't get a lot of praise, that I think he's a guy that not a real big guy, but played very well. Andrew Bechtold, I'm really interested to see his development as a catcher. I know he played in the Arizona Fall League as a catcher. He's got a big bat. Maybe doesn't hit enough to be a third baseman or whatever, but as a catcher, he could, if he can get it. He caught one game for us the last weekend of the season after we clinched, was phenomenal. Just because I know, I'm going to throw this name out there. I think he's a free agent. I don't think we've re-signed him. But because catcher is they say is the easiest way to the big leagues, maybe not. I mean, it's just the easiest path. A guy that doesn't get a lot of anything written about was Roy Morales. When we lost Winder and Miranda, it was Roy Morales who was one of our catchers who really picked up offensively. And, he was a big part of our success. And, of course, B.J. Boyd. But when we kept carrying it on and took off, I think Roy was a big part. It was one of the first times in my baseball career we ever had a catcher bat as the leadoff spot. And he didn't have any power. I think he had one homer all year. But he batted over 300 and got on base and just started things. So maybe any of those guys I think are good choices.
So I did hear that Roy Morales signed a 2-year deal, so he will be back in the organization in 2022. Whether or not he's in Wichita or maybe it's an opportunity in St. Paul, we'll find out. Obviously, David Banuelos will play into that as well if he's ready for full time. Chris Williams was not good at Cedar Rapids. I think he was hitting 100 with no power and a lot of strikeouts. He showed up in Wichita and he played well in limited duty. I want to throw 2 names out there because and Joel, thank you for your question. I do appreciate it. I'm going to give you 2 more names. And I think we've talked about these guys, Tim, but I don't think either gets talked about enough. Number 1 is Jordan Gore. First of all, he was the starting shortstop in 2019 for the Pensacola team, which of course was the AA affiliate that year until Royce Lewis got out there. But not only is he throwing hard, which made him an intriguing pitching option, but he threw a ton when I saw him in Cedar Rapids or I watched on MILB.TV. A ton of changeups, a ton of sliders. He's a legit prospect. The other one I want to throw out there is Austin Schulfer because he's a 19th round pick. Doesn't get talked about, but I think if I heard you correctly, he's sitting 93 to 96 or touching 96. Maybe a reliever long term, but did a nice job making his starts this year. And I think, the Twins added 6 guys to the 40-man roster. I think I had Gore and Schulfer 7 and 8.
No, both guys were good. Especially, Schulfer, he was the only pitcher in our rotation on opening day that made the turn. He made he made every rotation spot he made, all season long. He does sit 90. He's in that 93 to 97 range. And it's funny because he's not a very big guy. I'm not a scout by any means, but I've been around it enough. His future would be more in the bullpen. I think he's a guy. Obviously, I felt bad for him the final game of the season when we lost in the championship series. Took a line drive off his leg. He ended up staying in the game. He didn't have the same stuff. Ended up giving up like a 3-run homer with that injured leg, and I felt bad because you admire the toughness and of staying in the game, but ended up taking a loss. But I think he's got a good future. Jordan Gore, I wouldn't honestly be surprised if he gets Rule 5 by a major league team. The only reason why I say that, and I hope it doesn't, obviously being a Twins fan, but he's a little older, obviously because of his his shortstop career. I think he's 26 or 27.
Yep, I think.
Yeah, so he's a little older. So he would probably plug into a major league clubhouse a little bit easier than some of these other guys. And the fact that there's not a lot of mileage on that arm, because of him being a position player, and he threw very hard. And I think for a bad major league team that's looking, they might be able to stash him on their roster for the whole year. I wouldn't be surprised in December if that day actually comes at the winter meetings, depending on what all happens here in the next few days. If somebody decides to take him and put him at the end of their bullpen, because I think there's an upside to him.
Yeah, completely agree with you. I want to talk about one more group of of players, and then I need to let you go, or I need to get back to work. And that's the bullpen. I did a story on Yennier Cano and Giovanni Moran earlier in the year. Obviously, Moran did make it to the big leagues. Cano did move up to AAA, I think even ahead of Moran. But those two are intriguing. At the same time, I think Ryan Mason did a nice job once he moved up to AAA as well. He's a guy that I think is often overlooked. Are there other bullpen arms too that you think are intriguing? I know you saw a lot of guys late in the year, maybe for just an outing or two, that you'll probably see more next year. But any other guys you'd mention?
trying to think, I should have had my stat sheet here next to me so I can look at it, because I'm sure I'm missing some guys. If you haven't had Ryan Mason on the show, he's a Cal Berkeley guy. He gets in depth with conversations, so he's a good one for you to go get. I was impressed. Early in the year, his numbers weren't as great here as they could have been. He had some bad outings early, and as a reliever, sometimes it takes a month to correct one bad outing. Yeah, Ryan Mason was impressive. And I was happy that he got the call up to AAA, and I was happy that he had success there. I think he's a guy definitely the Twins could look at, because he's got good movement, a lot of late movement. He's a different style pitcher, so I think Mason's got a real shot of being a bullpen guy and being part of that mix, either this year at AAA and of course in the big leagues. I think he's definitely, and I'm missing some other names, but there's definitely some guys out there pitching wise that are young and coming along that I think the Twins are going to have in the long run.
All right. Two questions. Number one, you personally, what do you do in the off season, both job wise, obviously not calling games, but also just what do you do when you don't have a game? What do you do with your family? What are some of your away from baseball things that you enjoy doing?
Well, in the off season, I work full time for the team. Right now, we're planning our promotions, looking at some things for next year. I do some corporate sales. I do the planning of the travel and all that stuff. How we get to each of the cities. But mainly, the main thing in the off season is, obviously, a lot of the PR stuff you see from me, on our website or press releases and different things like that. I do a lot of that, but it's mainly corporate sales and involved in the promotions and stuff. From a family standpoint, my wife was being a Midwestern girl, me being from Pennsylvania. We were excited about moving to the Midwest. Our young daughter just turned 5. So we go to the zoo. We stay active. We were just in Iowa this past week. Took my daughter to Disney on Ice, so she certainly enjoyed that. We just try to get out in the community and do a lot of things. I don't know exactly. Obviously, in our time that we've lived in Wichita, we haven't been able to do as much as we would like because it's been COVID times, but right. I'm glad that everything is getting a little better. But we watch a lot of sports. The other day we were at a restaurant in Des Moines, Iowa, and the waitress was so excited that my daughter was sitting there. They had the flags hanging from the roof, from the ceiling, and she knew most of the NFL flags. She'd be like, "There's the Vikings. There's the Ravens," and she would go boo to the Ravens. She's a Steeler fan, so so it's exciting, and we watch a lot of sports, but it's fun. I mean, I've really enjoyed the last few years. After all those years of just working in baseball, and that's the only thing I cared about, to actually have a wife and a young daughter to kind of try to groom her to being a big baseball fan as well.
Very good. That sounds great. And then the last question is, I know that, Cedar Rapids does get fans from the Twin Cities, from Minnesota, that come down to Cedar Rapids. And I'm sure there's parents that are here as well. Talk a little bit about the experience at the ballpark in Wichita. What are some of the things in that area that fans can, that do make a longer trek there, can do just around the ballpark or, around the city. Just kind of, your 1 minute sales pitch for Wichita and the Wind Surge games at Riverfront Stadium.
I got to meet some of the players' families this year, and I appreciate them reaching out to me either through Twitter or through email, so they can continue to do that. Sad to see Trey Cabbage be, signed by the Angels, but his dad, him and I communicated quite a bit. But if you're coming to Wichita, you probably don't need a rental car. If you drive here, that's one thing, you'll have your car. But if you fly here, the hotels are all walking distance from the ballpark. You can walk to the stadium. You can walk to a lot of the great restaurants that are in the area. We've got good food here. And there's definitely, with the advent of Uber and all that sort of stuff, you could be able to go check out some of the sites without that extra expense. But yeah, for the most part, I know a lot of the families stayed at the hotel. We have 4 or 5 hotels all within walking distance of the ballpark. So it's a great, safe downtown area. So I definitely am. Hopefully, I met Spencer Steer's parents and Trey Cabbage's parents and Ryan Mason. You know what I mean? So there's definitely a few over the course of the year, and I'm glad they all make the trip. And it's a great atmosphere. The ballpark is sits right on the Arkansas River. Yes, that's how it's pronounced. But it's a safe place to bring your family, and it's a great place.
That's fantastic. I was going to point something out there. Doesn't surprise me though that you've got a lot of parents. It's fun to see, your enthusiasm for the ballpark, for the team, for the players, and all of that as well. Tim, I just want to say thanks. I usually say 20, 25 minutes. I figured with Sean it was a little longer, and as you as another broadcaster, it'd probably be a little bit longer too. But I appreciate taking time here to kind of talk with us, and it's been great. It's been fun kind of getting to know you and work with you over the last year or whatever it's been, and I look forward to hopefully a new season here.
Yeah, I remember that first email I sent to you. I think it was like February of this year. We really haven't even worked each other that long, now that we're starting to get ready for the Twins, AA affiliation. No, I appreciate all the work you guys do at Twins Daily, and it's good to know you, and you guys do a great job. And hey, I'm happy to be here, and I'm really excited about opening day next year.
Very good. Stay on for a second, but I want to thank not only Tim, but those of you that have listened or will listen, whether it's on Twins Daily, Facebook, Twitter, YouTube. Leave some comments. Let me know who else you'd like to see us talk to on the show. What other ideas, what other questions you'd like to see. Definitely appreciate your input. And again, shortly after this is done being live, I'm going to go in and we'll get this up on the Twins Daily podcast, which again, you can download wherever you get your podcasts from. Thank you to Tim. And again, appreciate your time and everything. And of course, go Twins.
And go Surge.
And go Surge, of course. Absolutely.